Hi, thank you for tuning in to the Finding Harmony podcast with me, your host, Harmony Slater. Hi, welcome to the Finding Harmony podcast. I'm Harmony, and I'm here with Russell Case.
Harmony.
Yeah.
Based on the success of last week's episode,
Okay.
Warner Brothers came to us with a deal to promote the Barbie film.
Okay, yeah.
That went really well. We made $25. And this week, based on the content of last week's episode, the production company behind Elvis, the Baz Luhrmann film, came to us.
Yeah.
And
that
they
one.
didn't offer us enough money. So I turned them down.
Too bad.
It's a shame. But what we have instead of Elvis, we have Scott Johnson from the British Isles.
I'm happy to talk about Barbie. It's great.
I
haven't seen Elvis. But Barbie was amazing.
Barbie is a much better film. Wow, it's a work of art. Elvis was a fucking
No,
shit
he didn't
show.
like Elvis. I liked Elvis. I watched it twice.
I haven't. I've heard mixed reviews about Elvis for sure. My brother really likes it.
Elvis is great. Don't get me wrong. Elvis is great. The actor that played Elvis is magnificent. It's the fucking director.
He doesn't like that director.
Holes.
He doesn't watch anything that director does. I have to force him to watch Elvis.
Rubbish.
Well, Baz
That's
Luhrmann.
Your personal opinion.
Yeah, he is a bit. He is a bit.
I have a master's degree in fine art.
Doesn't matter to me.
It does. It makes a difference when you.
He's a bit Marmite. We call him Marmite in the UK because you either like him or you hate him.
Fuck.
That's true.
My fucking.
I also love Marmite.
Oh, it's too salty by far.
What's We've been so
right?
It's just
maybe
too
there's
much
like
salt.
A correlation.
That's the thing. It's like you don't like Baz Luhrmann.
It's like a Baroque salt cellar. It's too much salt. That's what it is.
But then me and Harmony have never done fine arts.
No, it's true.
You're folk artists. That's it.
We're folk artists.
Folk artists. That's
I'll
nice.
Take that.
Yeah, we are.
I'll take that.
Yeah. Do you work in still life? Is that right,
still
Scott?
Life.
And did you come from an arts background to do still life?
I mean, that's how we met, Russell, in Brighton years ago. You drew me. Don't you remember?
You drew Scott in a still life.
I don't remember drawing Scott.
Did I have you over to me? Really good name for a yoga. You said that's a really good name for a yoga studio. You should use that one day.
I can't quite tell if he's kidding or not. And if I did have him in my house in Brighton,
I think you
Julie
did.
Martin's flat. Did you come over to Julie Martin's flat and did I draw you? Do I still have it in my room?
I don't remember. I mean, you said you were going to put it on your wall. Is that good?
No, I must not have put it on my wall. Yeah.
Man,
did you really study with me at the Brighton Natural Health Center? I don't think so. I don't think you did.
No,
I know that I came
to
Kent. I came to Kent.
I booked you for a weekend.
Yeah, and I came. And
you did.
I
was
tore.
Really nice. It was fun.
I tore me piriformis out, and I couldn't walk for like 2-3 years. I was on fire that day, and I did a little Dwipadi demo. It was the best Dwipada I've ever done. I felt like Maya Heiss. That's how fucking good it was. I was like straight up. My legs were straight back. It's like, look, it's easy. I just got off the plane from India. Look how fucking easy Dwipada was. And I herniated so many discs. I haven't been the same since, honestly.
Oh no!
Thank you.
I'm sorry that happened on my workshop. We
Kent,
all had a great time.
That's what I associate with Kent.
It was all his own.
We had
fault,
a great time.
Yeah.
No, we did meet. I did book you, and it was fun. And it was the one time we met in person. And, that was the thing. It was right. That was years ago. It was around 2005, 6, something like that. And I'd started. I remember going first ever workshops I used to go to was in Oxford with. Did you ever go and see Ian McDonald.
Oh, I've seen
Yes.
Ian so many fucking times. Yeah.
Yeah, he started.
Good
He's been
old
doing
Ian.
workshops. Yeah, he's an amazing man. Anyway, so I started
He's
going there in 2002. I was there a couple of weeks back teaching. I'll always go there. He's always it's such a lovely thing. Anyway, I
he's a
remember when I
fixture.
started going up there and seeing that he was doing workshops and thinking I could do that in my area. So I did. And you were one of the first people I booked because I knew you were down in Brighton.
That's so cool.
I'd heard lovely things about you. And that's where I met one of my really close friends, Guy.
Guy, I know Guy. Yeah, I've got
Guy.
I've got a print of his in the other room. I kept his work. I kept his. I'll go get it.
He was a painter.
Should I go get it?
No.
No, he's a printmaker, and I have a print of Ashtanga Yoga Brighton.
Oh, that's
that's Guy.
Oh,
yeah,
cool.
Yeah, that's Guy.
Guy
that's where I first met Guy, and we've been friends ever since. But so that's where I first met Russell. The only time I met Russell. But I never went
met
down
on a John Scott workshop or anything.
No, I don't
think so.
Well, did you ever go to a John Scott workshop, Russell?
I went down to Penzance and I brought me tent and I ate wild garlic and pot noodles for a week, and then I would make my little way to his studio and do the yoga and watch him and Lucy fight. And then I'd go home and I'd sleep in my tent and eat my wild garlic that I dug out of someone's backyard, and then I had a wonderful time.
That's great.
Came home.
Yeah, that's all. That's what happens when you go to Cornwall.
That's right.
You eat wild garlic and live in a tent.
Yeah, just basically that is it. Yeah, live in a tent and watch people fight.
And watch people fight.
Stone broke. I couldn't have been more poor at that time of my life. God, the garlic really helped the pot noodles. Honestly, it helped a lot.
Although then you didn't get readjusted a lot in the studio because you smelled so much.
Oh yeah, that's why everyone was avoiding you.
Lucy's like going like that as he walks past.
Oh,
right,
Lucy. Yeah. I quite fancied Lucy. She was really quite sexy in like a giant motherly way. And John was so small, and I thought, how are the two of them together? But I really kind of wanted her for myself. Did you feel that way about her too?
I think what I loved about both of them is they had, they did have this kind of energy, but when he was on point, it was amazing. They had these they were two different sides of the same coin. I think when they connected, he was just like this. He's a genius, crazy genius, and she has the ability to see things incredibly deeply and meticulously. And when they came together in those early years, when we were learning from them, we used to go there, and there used to be 8 to 10 people, and they'd be like, they wouldn't have any more than that, and they'd be like doing double adjustments and stuff like that. And so it was just like this incredible. It's almost they put you in this container. So I thought Lucy was an amazing teacher in her own right. She was able to. She's taught me some of the things that I still hold on to today, that I help with today and help me to see. So to see things in students and, have a look, see things that come up and particular energies and stuff like that. So Lucy's just like, I've always got a lot of time, or love for the time I spent with her. But the both of them kind of reminded me of both of them. Yeah. Well, the both of them were incredible, like together. When like you said, when they were like aligned, sometimes they wouldn't be, but when they were aligned, they were a force. They were they were the best teachers I've ever worked with.
Oh,
for sure.
She kind of reminded me of like Christina Ireland, like a kind of Amazon woman, like a force of feminine strength that when it's in full flower, like is an indomitable force that men just have to get out of the way.
Yeah. You could say that's a kind of a good yeah. You could say that about her for sure. Yeah, but it was an amazing time. That when, and it's compared to what it is now. Like those, I look back at those first 10 years of practice up until probably up to the point when Pattabhi Joyce passed away. Where those for me and for me in the UK and studying with John and just meeting John and knowing that he was my teacher and those guys were my teachers was just like really potent. Felt like a really potent time. To study and learn.
I'd love to dive into that a little bit.
Yeah,
like
sure.
what
would you like
I mean,
know?
what was it? I don't know. I like this idea, this idea of finding your teacher or like identifying a teacher. And I feel like it's something that was like really highlighted in those early days. Like you need to have a teacher, and who's your teacher? Like those were questions that we'd get asked a lot.
Yeah, it's not as popular now.
So I'm curious, like what your thoughts are around that.
I think it's I remember like learning from John, and he was that was the one thing when we learned from him and we learned about being teachers and stuff. He said to us, like, when someone comes in, you ask them who their teacher is. And that was that, and that but that came from Joyce, and I imagine, I think I asked some people, and Sharat still asks that, like, who's your teacher? And I think it's to kind of work out.
It's on the application form.
Yeah, so it's to work out the kind of like idea of consistency, but it felt like, I don't know, in Ashtanga back then there was less teachers about, and it felt like, I don't know, I felt I really wanted to connect with someone. Again, it was just like I met John in a workshop in 2002 and came away going, yeah, he's the one. He's the one, and it was only because
what was it that made him the one?
Well, I've been studying for like 6 months, only 6 months or so, and I'd been studying yoga since 1999, and just doing weekly classes. I had a really beautiful teacher who was a hatha yoga teacher, and she used to introduce shiatsu techniques and talk right from that early stage about energy lines. And she was great. She got me to, I remember the first time I ever like relaxed into a pose, and it was in her class, and it was in doing Trikonasana. And she said, Scott, just like, let's soften your hip and knee a bit. And I just went, okay. I just went, oh wow, okay. And it just kept going. I just felt like it was like I just went, that, and I'd never felt that kind of sense of my body shifting. So there was something I had something quite already that was there around, rather it just being about moving. It was just a feeling of listening and feeling things as they change and noticing the ways that they did.
Yeah.
And then, and it was her actually who got me the first John Scott book when he came out in 2001, I think it was 2001, something like that.
Yeah, that's
I remember
right.
opening it and looking at the pictures. I'd heard about Ashtanga, but I'd never done it at all, and I didn't know anything about it. I just sort of been with my teacher, who was Hatha Yoga and Shiatsu, and it was just doing these nice poses. And you started with Pose of a Child, and it was just kind of slow. I remember looking at this book and going, "It looks amazing. How the hell is he doing that? What's like?
Yeah.
What's that?" And I didn't even know what vinyasa was and stuff like that.
Right.
I remember going, and then so I had the book, but I had no clue of what Ashtanga was. I was just enjoying these classes, and then I went to Sydney with Louisa when Herbie was young, and it was there that I first started Ashtanga, and it was just like, I remember coming out of the class, it was a guided class, and it was just, we was doing the poses that I recognised, but we just kept going, and I'm like, surely at some point we're going to stop. And
I love that feeling.
You know what I mean? Like, and it was just like, surely at some point we're going to stop. And I'm just sweating and sweating more. And I'm going, what? Like, and then at the end, I was just like this puddle and just went, boom. But like, I came out of that room and was just like, what is this I'm feeling? Because I felt like I'd never felt before, or like before without like the, naturally. feeling this incredible sense of lightness. Like it was the lightness. More than it was just like going, I said, what is this? It was almost, I walked back down the street and it felt like I was just a little bit walking higher off the floor. It's hard to explain. And then I was sold and I came back and I found a class that was local to me. And then 6 months later, I met John Scott. I went to his workshop in Oxford with Ian MacDonald and Josephine, who are really good friends. And I remember going to that. I remember there was a particular family. There's a stressful family situation going on at the time. And I remember going there, and it was quite full on. I remember going there feeling really heavy, thinking, should I be going here?
Yeah.
And I said, no, I'm going to go. And going on the way up there, driving there, feeling, when something really is weighing on you and it's like heavy. And I went there and then just spent the weekend just with all these people, like about 45, 50 people, and then coming out of the workshop and the situation hadn't changed, right? But I could not stop smiling. Like for some reason, nothing of the situation changed, but I just could not stop smiling all the way back in the car. On the way back, I was just it was really mad. I was thinking I was mad because I had this real sense of, again, that sense of lightness in this lift. And I just really massively connected to I'd never been in such a potent group of people before. I'd never been in such there's a man who had children, who was a father, who was saying things, who was, that were really I was landing, everything he was saying was landing in relationship to what I understood about what I was doing. And I thought, it was kind of it was all like the weekend was just like this mash of, your first workshop is intense. You're like going, what? There's all these kind of big wide eyes, and at the same time, this situation in my life, just the way I changed the way I saw it, where I'd never had that before either. So it was just like this. It gave me this ability to look at things differently, and I'd never known that was possible.
I'm surprised to hear that, actually, because just like listening to you and feeling your vibe, you strike me as quite a sensitive and thoughtful person who's kind of admiring and watching what's occurring. You were talking about the energy lines of the body, and I wondered if you were one of those fellows that paid attention to like the way lines between like Stonehenge and Avebury, and had a kind of a cultural affinity for that. Like you might be like just a wee touched, and there might be something like that in your family.
I think my mum's got some kind of spiritual whackery in there. but
whackery. That's the word I was looking for.
Yeah.
Where's the whackery, Scott? Where's that come from?
But I think, I had a really heavy upbringing. And so I got to, so I was quite sensitive, but I didn't know what to do with that sensitivity. I definitely feel like, a number of things. Yoga has massively helped me to get in touch with what I sense and what I feel in relationship to the world, and my place in it. Also being a father. But I think, no, I had it was only once I started. I mean, I had a really I had it up until I was my early 20s. It wasn't really happy at all. I felt like I was struggling against life. And then, I got married and met Louise. It was great. That was amazing. But I still felt that there was something really missing, which I wasn't able to hold on to. I didn't have any control. And so
were
I
you
think
stomping around with like a mohawk and Doc Martens? Like were you throwing were you throwing bottles through windows? Like, what did it look like? What did heaviness look like?
Well, no, I was like, I mean, no, I went to, I left, I said I had to leave home when I was 18. I had no choice. And then I was like fumbling around trying to work out, where to live, and just here, there and everywhere. And then for me, I got massively into the rave culture in the early UK, so I kind of got into going to like raves, like right when it kicked off in the early 90s. It was amazing. It was such an amazing time, but it was also this kind of something that I used to just disassociate, I think, as well. went into the party life and just everything that came with it. And it was just almost like I was like, tuning to a certain degree, tuning out, but I didn't know what I was tuning into or tuning out from. And I think for a lot of my young years, I struggled with thinking of where my place was, just because like, my mum was an alcoholic when I was, until I was 15, So I didn't have I got a lot of love for her, but she was really unwell for a lot of my childhood. So I had nothing with her to hold on to. So I got into my early 20s, not having any rudder, just not sure where I was going. And well, I felt rudderless, And then the best thing I ever did was like, I met Louise, and then we went traveling. And when I went traveling, that opened my eyes up, because we went to India, we went to Thailand, we spent 15 months going around the world. And that was the point where I went,
amazing.
Oh, life can be like this, because I had grew up in like right on the edge of London, in a suburb of the county of Kent. In just this, where didn't really feel like there was any opportunity, And I felt there was kind of like, I felt kind of quite, the idea of being rudderless was right, because I just didn't know who I was, what I was going for, what I stood for. Like, it was like, and it was just that when I did that Ashtanga yoga class, and I went traveling, right, it was that. But when I came out of that Ashtanga yoga class, that was almost the first point for myself, on my own, where I went, what is that? What is that feeling? How can you feel like that without taking anything? Do you know what I mean? Like, what is that? How is that? Because it was just, I'd never experienced something like that without. I went raving and stuff like that. So we did the stuff there, but it was just a real moments where you just stop and you go, well, for me, it was like, that felt, I just needed to kind of not get it again, but go explore what it meant.
So it's so powerful. Like that first time you touch into spirit, right? Or you like your essence or higher consciousness, or that energy, that like infinite source of energy. It's so powerful to realize like, oh, this is in me all the time. And if you've never had that experience, it's like,
but it's not even having a name for it. It's going, what the hell is that? Like, because it's so not what your normal way of seeing the world is. It just goes, here's this experience, and it's like, and so it was like, well, it wasn't chasing that, but it was chasing the fact that there was something that happened that created that. or created a way it got. And so there was their moment in Sydney, but then there was a moment with John when I came back from John's thing, which was like, oh gosh, so stuff can be really heavy in my life, and it doesn't have to be heavy. I can I can sit with it and it still be the same, but I don't have to kind of hold it so hard. And it was and it was these sensitivities, like Russell, were just coming out, because I was going, how's that? Because there hadn't been that, I was just, and it was the first times where I'm going, well, I'm looking and I'm not having to chase anything that that gets that. It's just this experience of just feeling okay and feeling a little bit more heightened and going, well, I didn't realize that was possible. I didn't realize that was there. And then that's where the sensitivity comes, because you go, what's that? And then you go back, and it's just initially it's fleeting, because you go, what's that? And then you go back into and then the thoughts coming again. But there's that kind of ripple of something that you hold on to, that you go, well, there's a possibility here. So I think, when I met John, going back to your thing around a teacher, I still feel like teachers can be really valuable if they're the right person at the right time. I think especially now, in this age, with so many teachers, teachers can be really valuable and really important, and hold really valuable things. But there's
I love
more
that
of an
too.
understanding now. There's more of an understanding about
the right person at the
relationship
right time.
Yeah.
And
like anything, it was a bit it wasn't like, I think I saw the thing with Bataba Joyce and was thinking, I want to have a teacher like that. And so I saw the reverence that you all gave Bataba Joyce. And I think for a little while, I created that in John, which to a certain degree I needed, but then it didn't become healthy. So I had to kind of sit around kind of going, okay, so when we became friends, it became more of an even thing, But I was, I'd still massively looked up to him for about 10 years, when you place someone on a pedestal, that kind of thing. And now we're kind of working out what it means to have a teacher, and whether we can place them somewhere, but also it's whether the teacher allows themselves to be placed and things like that. So I think there's more of a kind of, but for me, and I think it was important for me to do that, to have a mentor, or it was almost like that's felt like what it was.
Can I ask you both a question? I'm just kind of thinking about this just now, about parenting, and thinking about the guru as a kind of pseudo parent, and we project onto the guru a kind of parental figure, and then we very often now we're talking about the asymmetrical power balance between the student and the guru, and how that can be really unhealthy and it can be really dangerous. But we don't talk about that with a parent. The parent is much more powerful than the child, and we expect the parent to make decisions for the child. We expect the parent to look after the child, but sometimes the parent is making narcissistic choices that are not in the best interest of the child. And we see that a lot, but we don't we don't cancel them, or put
sometimes we do
a hash, we don't hashtag me too our parents. I'm just wondering,
we could let's do it.
So I'm trying to get to depends what they do, but
I'm trying to get to the root of the question, and I think it's we don't hold gurus, we don't give gurus the same slack that we give parents, and why not? Why not treat a guru as a asymmetrical parent?
I mean, the thing about it is, you have parents because they're your parents, right? You have a guru because you've chosen to put that person to be a certain person in your life. The parent. I'm a parent to my children. And when you said about there's this thing around saying I have to watch my narcissistic tendencies. If I have to, as a parent, you have to be. You have to look at yourself as you make choices around your children. Otherwise, you just continue to place your own kind of biases and your own kind of way on them. And your kind of parenting is this kind of balance between, me and Louise kind of really spent this lovely balanced way of trying to bring up the children, so that we gave them just enough rope to understand who they are. Our job is to get them to 18 without alive. But with
for
that,
sure. Out of
but
prison, not
with that
pregnant.
kind of, you know what I mean? We're kind of like, we're making choices, and we're having to look and go, where am I in this decision? Also, and you never can really, because you're always a product of your own upbringing. You're always a product of your own. This is why I had to be like, for me, be like, like really looking to myself about when I was doing those early years of as parenting, because of my mum. But when you look at like, so you're looking at when parenting. My philosophy is that you're looking at yourself a lot. When I had Herbie, I was just like, well, I'm not going out partying anymore. I'm not doing anything like that. The one thing I didn't want to do was wake up like when he was young and he see me any different than when I put him to bed. That was the thing.
Yeah, that's horrid.
Because I didn't know my mum was who my mum was gonna be, because she was, and she's fine with me talking about all this because she's been in recovery for like 35 years, and I've got so much love and respect for her journey. So I had this kind of thing where all I want for them is to be loved, to feel like they can be loved, to journey into the world with that around them, so they can feel and move in the way that's right for them. And I think you do have to be. So you see parents all the time, like we're in the school, down in the school playground, you see so many people placing their own stuff on their kids. And that's the thing, the hardest thing you have to do is get out of your own way when you're parenting. And there's this balance between you wanting something for them and what they want. And there's this thing around they are people. Like even though they're young, they are people with their views of the world, their unique creative outlooks, so output. And what we are trying to do is nurture, encourage that creativity. This is the thing I totally believe in, that we all have this innate creativity. Our job is to help our children to find out what that is, so they can be comfortable to live in a world with who they are. We have to get out of the way, not impose my stuff on them and say, you're going to do this or you're going to do that. What is it what are the signs? What are they being drawn to? So there's a balance between, sorry.
Well, it's really beautifully said. And to follow the parallel, I think it's not so dissimilar from being a yoga teacher, where you're kind of looking out with love on your students, and you're trying to inspire their creativity and not just dogmatically control them, but also like you're giving them boundaries to kind of fall between to keep them safe, right? And at the same time, like there's also this very difficult balance to take, where you don't really just want to be their friend, because mates don't give you necessarily good boundaries, and yet as a yoga teacher, I often wanted to kind of blur those boundaries and be friends with my students and create unethical situations for myself. So I found I found myself in that kind of situation. Whereas like I'm not being a good teacher right now.
I think it comes back to your question around like parenting and like gurus and stuff like that, because when you look at for us as a parent, right, we have this innate relationship like with our children, and it's kind of like that thing is locked, and that's from birth. If you look at Harmony gave birth, that's even more than me. So you look at her, she gave birth to her son. So like from there's the innate relationship that grows from there. And the same with me. I watched all three of them. Some of the most profound experiences, probably the most profound experiences of my life, is watching those three children being born and seeing the innate primal nature. So you got that deep link. Well, when we look at the idea of gurus, is we we're adults and we're in a place where someone or something has affected us so much that we go, now you mean this to me.
Yeah.
Now you mean this to me, which means we've got this, the parent-child thing is this thing that's locked. The guru-student thing is this thing that's created through this momentary relationship or ongoing thing or something that comes up and the timing's right and you lick and you clock like that. And so then it's big. But then the thing is, we're adults more often than not.
Yeah.
We're adults. We're adults going, right, now you mean this to me and it's important. And now, I remember speaking to Greg when I wanted Greg on the podcast, right, on my podcast, Still Points.
Yeah.
Greg Nardi.
Greg Nardi, you love him. He's like one of my best friends. And all I wanted him to talk to me about was what a guru is for him, what happens, and what happens when it falls away. And so what he said is like, I said to him, what did it mean to you? He said, when I looked at Pattabhi Jois, he was in my heart.
Mm-hmm.
And so we place these people in our heart. Now, I don't know, perhaps that did mean he's some kind of, Pattabhi Jois was a father figure or something like that. But there was that sense of like, he'd placed him in there. And it was like, and then the thing is when everything hit around Pattabhi Jois and the sexual abuse, then he had to then deal with the fallout of that kind of, heaviness about having to kind of then feel that he had to let that go. And I really watched him go through some massive grief.
Yeah.
But the other thing, but so there is, but this is the other thing around looking at what happened with Pattabhi Jois, because I've spoken to enough people about it and said, what did you know? What did you do? And they said, well, we didn't do anything because he was like a father to us, and you can't talk to your father like that. And it was really interesting to hear it in those words. Like he was like, a lot of people said he was this father figure or grandfather, all that kind of thing. And we didn't feel like we could say that to him. And so I don't know what you know what I mean?
Totally.
So
I think it's so interesting. Yeah, that and what you're speaking to is, there's so much we could talk about in this metaphor of children and parents, and children get to a stage. My son's there right now, where everything I do is so annoying, and like
you're not cool, Mom,
self-defining and stepping into his own personhood, and really separating himself from me as like this central figure in his life. And so I think it's very natural, this kind of progression of the relationship, and then redefining roles. And I think that's something you could probably speak to in your own experience with John Scott, of sort of projecting onto him sort of this role as like a central figure, a mentor, a teacher, maybe even a guru. And then also kind of having to like renegotiate that at some point of like, who am I on my own? How do I step into my own authority as a teacher and like be me without you as a central figure governing all of my thoughts and actions and teaching style? Who am I as a teacher? And then having to circle back kind of after separating and renegotiate that connection again.
Yeah. Does
that resonate?
When it comes, it does, because we have to look at the changing nature of our parents, of us, like our relationship with our children, and look at it in relationship to the same age when we were and our parents. And because we forget, we get so consumed going, oh my God, they're changing and it's really hard and blah, blah, blah. And you forget at the same age, you were just like, bye.
Totally.
Bye, Mum. Bye, Dad. I want to be with my mates, and they're much more fun than you, and all that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And so this is like everyone. This is all of us.
Yeah.
This is us when we were their age, and there was their mum, and everything works out like that. And so, when I saw that, I'm like, of course, they're like, of course they're starting to change. You watch and this is the beautiful way that you watch the evolution of, of childhood and your own way as a person yourself. You're challenged by that, but you change yourself at the same time. Not only are your children, this is the beautiful thing about practice, right? Is that, and having a practice is that, you always see that you're changing.
Yeah.
And your children are changing.
Mm-hmm.
And as your children, you can change with them.
Yeah.
But if you stay the same, you're going, but like that, you have to navigate yourself as they're navigating their self. It's just that they're going through that primal stage of puberty and stuff like that, where all of these things are just happening and everything's exciting. And we're seeing it and going, oh no, but I wish they were still small. And no, that's not going to happen. So what do you have to do?
No, it's not going to happen. Yeah.
What do you have to do in yourself to be able to mature? There's a maturity going on in everyone all the time around the different things that occur by being together.
Yeah.
And I think this is I think this is the new, if we look at the way that we interact in yoga and the way that we connect and the way that we teach and the way that's received, I think there is this new maturity arising, which is about into relationship and not hierarchy, but more like there's experience, but then the experience is coming alive between us. And yes, there might be projection and transference, but it's my job as a teacher to be able to spot that and go, no. To kind of go, you be your own person. Don't put, I like people having coming to my workshops over and over again in my classes, and they get a lot, but also I don't place myself on any kind of pedestal. I try not to, because I don't think that's healthy. I think for me, it feels more healthy for me. It felt more healthy for me to kind of, I don't know. I think it's, do you know what? I think for me, it's just been teaching Mysore for since 2009 in London Bridge. That's when I opened my shala. And I opened it up because as a response to John and Lucy, and it was just really valuable. And that's the other thing, is that when I discovered that I loved Ashtanga Yoga and I discovered I wanted to be a teacher, the only thing I ever wanted to do, I didn't want to do anything else other than just run a Mysore program. That was the only thing I ever wanted to do.
Yeah, it's
in
just
my heart.
Pure and gorgeous that just hang a shingle, let people come, and nothing else. And you have to at some point realize that you are a business owner, and there has to be a marketing department, and that's the kind of thing that makes you want to quit the whole enterprise. But I did just being a Mysore teacher is just lovely and gorgeous.
Oh my God, it's
until
so
someone until someone fucking kicks out at you and says, no, John taught me something different. Fuck off. It's
no, but that's just, I think the thing is we're always coming up against our own projections. And like you're saying, as a teacher, if someone's saying, I don't like it that way, I want to do it different, and you're feeling like your ego is being offended by that, you got to do your own work and look at what is it in you that is being triggered, and what kind of wound or history or story do you have that you need to do work around?
This is the whole thing, is the how defensive and insecure are you that any slight to your authority sends you off, and you start taking people off your cake list or authorized list or whatever it is.
It's a big job.
One of the things I've never had to be, the thing is I've never had to worry about that. We set up in 2009, and it's and like I said, it was the only thing I ever wanted to do. I saw the power in what John and Lucy were doing, and I just was like, that's just really. I saw him, right. So this is the thing. I saw him teaching in that way, and I thought, I at some point would like to be teaching like that. that was almost like when I saw him teaching, it was like, there's a teacher who I'd like to emulate. There's someone I'd like to emulate. If I was ever going to do this for real, there's someone I'd like to emulate. And then I saw, and when I saw them teaching, going back to us, Russell, right at the beginning, like what they were doing down in Cornwall and how they were, transform over 5 days, transforming people's practice just by the way that they were able to see the body or see the breath or work with a language, all that kind of, the way that John has a beautiful way of really using metaphor and direction and the storytelling and stuff like that. And with Lucy, with the way that she was able to see energy and see the body and her alignment, it made me go, this is something like, it changed me. And I was like, this is what I would like to be able to, this is how I'd like to be able to share the move this forward. It felt for me like really, and I met Pataba Joyce like, 3 times just in the when he did the tours. I never went and studied in Mysore. I wanted to, but never got the opportunity. And so I thought to myself, well, to do this justice, I want to find a teacher who I deeply connect with. And it was that. It was just, I found that connection. I found, there was a way that made me feel, but it's like, well, how is he doing? How is he doing that? What's going on that he can see, that he can sense? And that was and that was the evolution of my seeing someone, the evolution of the sensitivity that was coming alive in me, and seeing it kind of like in relationship to like in the Mysore room, because I didn't see him anything out of that, but going, how is he able to sense that? Do you know what I mean? How is that supposed? How is he supposed to feel that? How does he know that thing? And so for me, it was potent, and I was like, but I also saw that, in those 5 days, that something really powerful was happening, and that's why the Mysore method became. I remember the first class I took over as existing class, and in 2004, I think it was only because the teacher who I was going to suddenly left. And he went to set up a retreat, and he was going, you should take it over. And went, I'm fine, thank you. I'm happy just practicing. And everyone else was going, but you're really good at it. You should do it. And I'm going, I'm all right. And they went, please. And I went, okay, I'll do it. But I don't know what I'm doing. So I just went, I actually did another teacher training with a right at the beginning with a guy called Brian Cooper. I don't know if you ever met him. He's an amazing.
I've heard of him.
Amazing. He's a really amazing character, but he was a great teacher at the right time. But he
I think he has like one of the oldest teacher trainings in England or in London, right?
Yeah, I mean, I did one of the first ever 200-hour teachers in the UK. Like it was in Scotland, and it was his. And then but so I went and studied with him because I'd be given this class. I better learn how to do this properly. So I did. And then as soon as I took over this class, it was guided. I said to everyone, by the way, we're now doing Mysore. And they were like, oh no.
What?
No, that's not
what I signed up
for. Can we have someone else now? That kind of thing. Anyone else?
Yeah.
But I took it over because I was like, this is what I want to be able to teach, and I want to, and I could see the benefit of it. And so when I set up Still Point in 2009, it was all I ever wanted to do. And the beautiful thing about setting up a Mysore program, right where it was in the heart of South London Bridge, right next to one of the main stations in London, was that both like Oscar and I, who I set it up with, we were still working. And because it was a Mysore program, we'd like do it, I'd start it, and then we would go to work. So it didn't have a thing it didn't have to be a thing that worked off its own back. We both had other jobs. So we were doing something because we were passionate about it. And it just grew and grew and grew from there.
What sort of work were you doing during the day? What was that? Were you a builder? You're an electrician.
I was an electrician, yeah.
Yeah.
This is why I'm a really good Mysore teacher, because I just was able to get up and go to work.
Yeah.
Getting up early, no problem.
Literally,
I got that covered.
You just have to get up at like 5 o'clock and get on a building site for like 7:30. And I just did it, like got up an hour early, and I just got up and I'm there. And I learned how to, you have to get up and be consistent. And that's what being a Mysore teacher is like, you have to keep doing it and keep being there. But what I loved about the Mysore thing is like, and what became really apparent quite quickly, because I taught in the same area, but bar the pandemic, for the last 14 and a half years. And all you are is a consistency for people.
Yeah. I really admired that.
You're there because people know you are. I'm there as much as I can. People know that everything can be going through their lives, but they know they'll turn up at London Bridge at 6:30, and I'll be like, "Hi, good morning. How are you?" Yeah. And that's the beautiful thing about a long-term Mysore program, which is what I always loved about Hamish and Eddie, the people who've been doing it that long term. They become these kind of just placeholders for people who know they have something consistent to go to.
Yeah.
Harmony's dad's an electrician as well, but I was just going to say that I really admired that. I really admired that in my dad, that I've worked for him on occasions because he's a mechanic, and he would do that. Just get up at 7 o'clock, go to work. We'd go to Timmy's for breakfast and get a coffee and a donut, and then we'd go to work and do that every day. And then there was a particular time, I think when I was in my late teens, early 20s, where he then wanted after work to take me to the pool hall where we could smoke reefer in the parking lot and then go pick up chicks. And we were, basically twins at that age. And people really thought that we were brothers or twins. And I mean, then the kind of the lines of parenting kind of got blurred. I was like, this might be inappropriate that we're high and picking up chicks together. And the girls would always going to look at us as like, what's going on here?
I want to talk to you because I think also you have a deep passion and love for Buddhism. And I think that's something that we both connected on to when we first met. And
did you notice that in the Barbie film, that it's a Buddhist film? Did you see it?
Go on, tell me. Go on, tell me, Russell. Where are the Easter eggs?
The Four Noble Truths.
The Four Noble Truths are right there in the film when she walks out of the palace for the first time and experiences, like the devas, the first the bit of dust on the petals of the rose. She experiences that. She walks out of the palace. And she sees old age, and she's standing there looking at and viewing the park, and she sees suffering for the first time in all its forms. Poverty, conflict, and old age, and she's struck by it, but also sort of struck by its innate beauty. And then, having realized that everything is suffering, understands that she has to give up her attachment to maintaining permanence, and must accept that things are impermanent. And then when she does accept that things are impermanent, she can then go to the gynecologist and experience bliss. And then she is fully human, and she can just go on. It's like, things are fine if you just accept it. Go to your appointment, get your bits examined, and then move on.
And Ken's Ananda.
Yeah, and then fully, I'm gonna bet £1,000 that Greta Gerwig is a Buddhist practitioner.
You should write an article on that. You should. I want to see you form that into like a proper piece.
Yeah, put it on your blog.
I'll copy paste it to you.
Someone already wrote an article on it.
I did. I did write.
It's just you've done it in AI, haven't you? ChatGPT.
Yeah, right.
I didn't use
ChatGPT.
ChatGPT, but I did text it to me friends on Discord. It's like, oh, you guys, you're gonna love this movie, bros.
But when I came in, and I had the great pleasure of practicing with you in Tenerife for like a day, or two, 2 days. But I was just really moved and struck by your presence and the energy that was very soft, but also strong. And also this sort of, it felt very like meditative in the practice space. And I think that's very intentional for you. Even when I was practicing with you in London at London Bridge recently, you bring this presence, this meditative presence into the way that you're teaching Mysore. And I mean, it's just also a part of your nature, I think. But how
The
did you
whackery.
kind of bring these things together, or how are you bringing these things together in your own practice and teaching and life?
I mean, the whole thing is like, when you the thing is when you taught so many people, for so many years, there was a time when we were in London and we were getting like 30 to 40 people a day for a long period of time before the pandemic. And then it went to like between 20 and 40, that kind of thing. And you meet them over and over again. And the other thing that's really interesting is like John's, so John's my teacher. John was my teacher. But I studied with him a lot, and we were friends. He came to Still Point, but I never went away and talked with him. And he used to have this thing where people would go. He would take a lot of his teachers away, and they would go and like teach with him in Goa or all the Salento, all these places, and come back. And people, and I used to be this almost like Still Point used to be this kind of like run through, like people who wanted to do teacher trainings would, when John was doing a lot of them, I'd send them. I'd say people in Still Point, if you want to study or learn to be a teacher, just go and do John Scott's training, go and John and Lucy's training, and so people would go and do that. But I would go and study with them a little bit, but I'd still be just doing my own thing in London Bridge. It wouldn't be like, I realised that I'd learned amazing stuff from these people, but there was also like this starting to feel like, what is it that I'm actually doing here? Like, what is it that we're actually doing? And yeah, because when you have people come in, what happens is like, this is the interesting thing about teaching. What I love so much about teaching in a city, because it's an incredible environment. It's a really beautiful environment to be able to teach in. You teach in retreats and all these places in the world, which are beautiful, and going on retreats is really important. But teaching in a city is about creating a space or a retreat-like space, or a space where people can let, for a couple of hours each morning, an hour, however they need, to let go of their concerns and come into a room and explore what it means to move and breathe and be themselves. And I saw that, like, where is the Ashtanga practice pointing us to? Like, is it this thing that's like, oh, once you do that pose, you can do that, means that. And once you're doing this kind of like, and what are we actually noticing when we're breathing, when we're moving, when we're practicing? What are we noticing right now? And, it really became apparent for me. I started to really massively question what I was doing with this when my business partner, Oscar, died in 2012. And we'd run it together from 2009 to 2012. And then in 2012,
was Oscar who died, who passed.
Oscar, yeah.
Oh.
And she passed in 2012 suddenly. Like, she was 34, and she had a bad fall in India, and like a whole life ahead of her. And then she like had this bad fall, and within 3 days she was dead. And like it was an incredibly like moving time, because I again, it was another shift in sensitivity, because like when you're teaching with someone, you know, you can like, for some of the days you could feel like, oh, do you know what? I can just don't, and I don't have to do too much today. Like I'm feeling a bit like that. Oscar can do, you know what I mean? You can play off each other a little bit, which is
I'm
quite
sorry.
nice.
Her name is Osgood.
Osga.
Osga.
Ozge,
Okay.
yeah, Oscar.
Okay. Okay.
And yeah, she was Turkish.
Oh, I
But
see.
she was this incredible spirit. Like she was a beautiful woman, like an incredible woman, like a really lovely friend, colleague, you know, practitioner. She had lots of lovely. She created a real kind of connection with a lot of people all over the place because she was so vibrant and full of life. And it was a real pleasure to be able to share the space and build this program with her. So when she wasn't there, it was just like suddenly she wasn't there. It was like, this isn't supposed to happen. Like that's not in the kind of like, that's not in the program, you know. But then suddenly I was placed in this kind of position of going, right, now I've got to make the decisions around what happens now after, like, you know, I had the day after she died, we opened it up in the morning, and because everyone was on Facebook then, before Instagram, going, what the hell's going on? And I said, well, I'm going to open Still Point up on the 2nd of January. And I did. And and then everyone came in. We had like 20 people, all the students in there, and Louise. And everyone was really, really, everyone was emotional in their own way. And we put up an altar. And I sat there and I was thinking, I know what this means for me. This means that now I have to direct it. And I was once at one point, like that almost was like the fight, I lost, you know, I was going through these layers of emotions, lost someone that close to me had never died before. At the same time, we were in the heart of this incredible, visceral space, which is what like a beautiful yoga studio is. A beautiful yoga community is like this thing that's alive and connected, and just has this beautiful energy flowing through it of like these ideas and these you know, these ways. And so I was in the heart of that, and I was sitting in front of her picture and these candles, and going, what the fuck do I do now? Half of me was like that. And as clear as the light of day, like she popped into my mind and she said, it's going to be fine. Like just go do it. Just carry on. Go and see everyone. And so from there, I just knew what I had to do. I just turned around and went to each of every one of those students who was there and sat with them, like in whatever position where they were. And all I said was like, whatever you know, it's really sad. It's so awful. However, whatever she meant to you, whatever you're holding, whatever light she had in your life, like keep that, because she was that vibrant and full of like energy and full of life and full of love, that holding on to it will be deeply meaningful. And will kind of, more often, I would suggest it would send you in the right direction. However she made you feel, whatever's that life she gave. Because what happened when she died, I had to send this email to 500, 600 people at the time saying, I'm really sorry to say your teacher's passed away.
Yeah.
And and then suddenly getting this influx of like, you start to see in someone's death, you actually see how full of life they were and how much they meant.
Yeah.
And I remember going, I went like, you know, I've said it before, we had this kind of week of like memorial. And then when I opened up the following week, when we got back to normal, I was just like, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to move. People were put in the room, and people were practicing, and I was practicing with them because I was really like, I don't know how to do this. And then, you know, again, what makes a beautiful teacher is one who comes and supports you. And John came up on the Tuesday, a week and a half after she died, and he said, to support me, he said, Scott, I'm gonna run the morning class, and we're going to do it in Oz's memory, and you're going to help me. So everyone came. He did a beautiful memorial class on a Tuesday, and then we went out and had a long 4-hour catch up afterwards. And he just one of the most beautiful things anyone has ever said to me, right, is I said, what do I do tomorrow, John? He goes, what you do is when they come in, you ask them how they are. You look at me, I ask them how they are. And then if they say they're okay, then you put them on their mat and you just say, Akam, Dway, Trini, and you just continue and you just carry on.
Counting.
And it was just the thing that I needed to do, because I'm like, we just continue. Everything's, everything changes. Nothing stays the same, but we just continue. And this is kind of like this is a poem I wrote last year, my favorite one. Like, everything changes, nothing stays the same, and we just continue. And it was just beautiful. It was just the best teaching I've ever had. And that's all I've done ever since, was just like go, oh, come on, let's just go. It's going to support that ability to continue in an open and spacious way. Now, what happened was, it was like, ongoing from that, I was working with a teacher at the time, just doing some mentoring, and she was a mindfulness teacher as well. And I'd decided to study mindfulness. I know what happened. I remember right at that time, I'd started to lean into the teachings or the work of Michael Stone.
Oh, yeah.
And Michael Stone's voice and way and words were exactly what I needed to hear at that point in time in my life.
Michael, who died. Yeah.
And he was one of them. He was the link, because he'd studied with like Richard and Mary.
Richard and Mary, he was a student of Richard and Mary's.
He was a student of Richard and Mary, and he was an Ashtanga teacher who'd gone back to Toronto, set up a Shalas, was teaching had been doing a lot of the Ashtanga yoga practice, but at the same time would study the Dharma. And so he set up, and he was the first one who was using like the internet and doing videos and like understanding. He was at a time when I remember seeing this incredibly beautiful video that Ian McKenzie had, this videographer, this filmmaker who I followed, had done of him at, what was the name of when everyone set tents up in the cities next to the banks, what was the name of that movement around 2012?
Yeah.
Like
anyway, it was
we are the 99%.
The 99%,
yeah. It was that movement around about that time, and there's this really beautiful video that I just could not stop watching, that really touched me about what he was saying in his words. And I went, this man and his voice and his language and the way he's kind of communicating, again, I'm sensing something in it. And when that happens, I love watching myself be moved by things. And so it was this, and what he was using yoga. He was talking about the Dharma. He was looking at ways that we can practice, but in a way that's more like this idea of horizontal, like it's not this high, not this kind of like vertical opening, but this horizontal way of moving into the world. And it got me thinking about this movement. Practice. Yeah, Occupy, that's it. It got me thinking about the Ashtanga yoga practice, about when we call it a moving meditation, which is always what, that's right at the beginning. It's a moving meditation, isn't it? Are you really, what are you really noticing when you're practicing? And I remember like I decided to do some mindfulness training, found a really beautiful mindfulness teacher. And I remember when I was like teaching us how to do body scans, and I did a body scan, and I was learning to teach them and do them. And then one day, so you lie there for like, 40 minutes, just traveling through the body. And I think, I wonder what would happen if I felt like this when I did my Ashtanga practice. And So I did. Well, one day I did a body scan, and then and then I was like, let's continue to explore what this feeling, this movement, this feeling in my body as I move and I breathe. And it was just like this incredible new way of just, again, one of those moments where you go, well, I didn't expect that, because nothing had changed.
Yeah. Right.
Everything had changed. Because I was just going, doing the pod. I was suddenly the presence, this awareness, this sense of like me not having to fight or just going like that. It was almost like, what happens if I feel my arms rise up? What happens if when I fold forward, I just softly fold forward, but not kind of trying to get forward as like really pulling forward, but actually move forward in a way. And it kind of really then started to take what I'd learned with John.
That's really interesting.
In my own way, and really go like this, really, and then it really helped me to explore my practice. But more often than that, I was watching people every morning come in and practice and fight, trying to find their way into poses, and I'm going, what are we pushing? Why are we pushing? Why are we pushing? What happens if we soften? And generally, I found that if we softened the way that we approached how we moved, we took this kind of really strong tapasic we have to do practice like this, and we still practice with the same quality, but we changed the intention, the way we practice changed. And you noticed the breath, you noticed how the breath initiated the movement before, and your body followed it. So it became this real kind of like hive of my own, really noticing the changing nature of, this feels good because I'm in my 40s now. It feels like this is a way I can feel like my body changing, and the way that I feel, there's a lightness here that I can bring to this, and I can still practice in a direction or in a way, if that makes sense. So I don't know, it just became, again, this another way of, by then I've been practicing like Stunga for 10, 11 years maybe. So the listening element, and when you teach with people, and when there's an openness here, this sensitivity that you'd kind of or go right back into, Russell, I think I'd really started to trust it. I'd started to trust it.
Yeah.
It's really interesting and fascinating how you've put it, and it reminds me of when I was in the rave scene in Chicago, which is similar to Manchester in the early 90s, late 80s, is you kind of go into it thinking it's a party, and then you find yourself taking a lot of ecstasy and cuddling with someone in the corner and having these extraordinary moments of trust and insight into your own condition of and like just feel so safe. And I didn't use a lot of ecstasy because I noticed that I could feel it whenever I wanted to. If I just listened, it's like, oh yeah, that's exactly what ecstasy feels like. I feel safe. I feel sensation everywhere if I just listen for it. And then when I did Vipassana, I was like, oh, this is exactly the same. This is exactly what ecstasy feels like. You feel sensation everywhere if you allow yourself to listen to it. And doing that, it explodes the category of asana, because you're always in your body. And if you're doing Ashtanga yoga and you're doing a posture, you're walking the dogs, you're playing golf, you're sitting in a chair, it's just all the fucking same thing.
Yeah,
there is no category of difference between those activities. And for someone to say that golf isn't yoga, so fuck off, it is.
Well, it depends. What you're saying, though, is that what makes something yoga is the quality of attention, the quality of awareness.
Yes.
And so I'm going to just beg to differ that most 99% of golfers may or may not be attuned to the quality of awareness of their body.
Yeah, fuck those guys.
No.
But I'm saying that when you have the quality of awareness, then yes, everything is you with your breath in your body in posture. And so, yeah.
I mean, the yoga practice creates the conditions to make that your main focus. But even then, it's often not our main focus. So it's an interesting
because
kind of
because what we do is we place the idea of everything on top of it. So we place the idea of poses or the way that's supposed to look on top of it, rather than trusting what something feels like for you. And so what we've got is this kind of like, we've got this system where we're trying to feel. We're trying to feel. We're trying to feel what openness and spaciousness means. For me, the word sukha instead of sukha. When you say it's not just comfortable, when you think of it as good space, which is a term and a translation of it, which I love and which I use, it transforms the way you understand what you're sensing in yourself. Because how can you breathe with space? How can you move with space? How can you sit with space? What does it mean to feel? And how can you feel? You can feel like in a pose stuck. But what does being stuck mean? And what are we fighting against? All of these things are like just these ideas of going, this practice means everything. You do this and you do that and you do this and you do that. But all of it is just a way of you moving your body from one way to the next and feeling it. And how are you doing it? Like, how are you moving? How are you, if you are doing like a vinyasa, are you really following the body to the fullness of the breath? Probably, maybe, but most not. Are you really feeling that movement? Or is it just kind of like an action that we do because we do it, rather than sensing the full expression of what the breath moving the body and the possibility of it? And the whole practice is built on this, a way of nurturing this awareness. It's like, it's not this thing, it's like, it can be consistent. You're getting to that consistency, but the meditation isn't about this thing about controlling the mind. It's actually controlling and being aware of everything I'm sensing and feeling. And this is like where the teachings of mindfulness came in, because you have the 4 foundations which work perfectly with asana. You have the foundation, first foundation, which is the body, the second foundation, which is feelings, the third foundation, which is the mind, and the fourth foundation is what you do with that, what the outcome of all that is. And so what it shows you is that, right now I've got a pain, or I've got a discomfort, and then it means, and that we make it mean something. There's a pain, it means this. Well, actually, can you soften and move in a way that's open? So perhaps that pain isn't something where you go, you have to be concerned about it, perhaps, but what is it you're being concerned with? What is it that you're feeling? Can you change the way that you move something so that perhaps that pain lessens? So you're kind of like, what the beautiful thing that some of the teachings of the Dharma show us is that things that are rising and falling away, and we're noticing them. Like the Ashtanga practice is so beautifully grounded that you can be aware of everything. It's just that we think we have to do this and do that and do this and try and fight our way into this, when actually, if you softened your approach to the way that the thing you're doing already, the whole thing changes. Because it doesn't become about trying to get anywhere. It comes about being exactly where you are now, and not worrying about what's coming next. Just being open to exactly what you feel, what you sense, how you're moving, where your breath is, all of these things. The whole possibility becomes more open. And this is the thing that I love about it, that what I've discovered, and what the way that we teach and still point, and is how can you practice with an openness? Like, are we still, here's a question, are we still practicing for someday being enlightened? Is this Ashtanga yoga? Is some point, is samadhi going to happen? Or can you stop and notice and just be present right now and not worry about the future?
Yeah.
Yeah, well,
and that's what
to me,
every
that's
single
freedom,
vinyasa,
right? Yeah.
That's what every single vinyasa offers us. This ability to feel and be more present and more open in what it means to breathe and move. It comes back to this this time after Oscar died. I was just like when he really asked me, what am I actually doing here? We live in a city. We live in a city. People come in and they go to work, and people come in and when you're dealing and teaching in a city, I think you should be kind of like, especially in a city like London, when you've got like all the different seasons. It's dark in the winter, it's light in the summer. Yeah, it's not like you're practicing in India. You know what I mean? It's like you have to respond. You respond to what you can do is the way the practice is so beautifully structured is because you can use it to respond to your life circumstances. And so I was looking at people after my best friend died. I'm like, what is this all about? Like, why someone like can be 34, have their whole life ahead of them, and suddenly it's gone. What are we fucking worrying about now? Why don't I decided to, well, I mean, I wasn't anyway, but I thought, I'm just not going to be another shitty yoga teacher. People go to work have to go to work to be with people they don't want to be with, and they get enough aggro at work. They don't need me telling them what to do and not to do and go, I'm just shouting at them, which can happen in some shalas. I just thought, how can I be helpful? How can I just be helpful with what comes up between us and what comes alive in the relationship of the room and the moment? And that was it.
And
then
I
people
love
walk
that.
out a little bit lighter than they came in.
And I think that is a total what you've created in the space and in the teaching. And you bring up such beautiful points, like about us projecting into the future, like some future state of enlightenment, whatever that means to you, and really exploring, like, what is that? A state free from suffering? Like, that's not going to happen. You live in a body, like, kind of like what we were talking about. There's always old age and sickness and injury and death. Like, sorry, like, all of these things are going to happen as long as you have a body, even if you're enlightened, right?
Broken ambitions.
And then, like, coming up against these obstacles, like all of these things in our practice, in our life. But, just to use an example in our practice, it doesn't even have to be an injury. It can just be like that posture that you're not looking forward to because it makes you feel bad about yourself, or it's hard, or and so then there's resistance there. And I mean, as an example, when I was practicing with you, I told you already that you gave the best Marityasana D adjustment I've ever had, and it was just like this beautiful
offended.
Yeah. But it's this beautiful, like so much, when we come up against these postures that are challenging or difficult, or there's some obstacle that, perceived obstacle in the way, we tend to try and fight against it or push through it or resist it. And that just makes it harder. And then, within the adjustment, within your approach, it just embodied so much acceptance and so much relaxation and so much softness. And rather than resisting the obstacle, it was really about just like being with it and breathing with it and softening into it. And then all of a sudden there's so much space and room to move. And it was just like a beautiful physical embodiment of a deeper experience that we all have every day in our lives with different things. And to me, that's really like the depth of a good asana practice, and the depth of a good experience in an asana practice is that you have these moments that you're somatically able to feel and embody that softening around something that's a perceived obstacle or perceived difficulty or something you're not looking forward to. And then when you somatically integrate that relaxation or integrate that acceptance, you're then able to change your approach to other obstacles that maybe aren't like a physical thing, but it's an emotional obstacle or a stressful situation.
Yeah, it's practice, isn't it? It's practice for other things.
Yeah. And so I think everything that you're speaking to is so beautiful. And then to not run a space that's like necessarily like a dictatorship kind of dogmatic, where you're just making people not feel good enough. And we can get addicted to that pattern too, right? Of like, oh, I'm not worthy, I'm not good enough. And then we go to a yoga practice and just perpetuate that pattern of, oh, I'm striving, I'm never going to get there, I'm really trying to get there. Oh, I got there. I can feel good and worthy for a moment and a second in my life. But now the goal is like, again, outside of me. And now I'm just going to push and strive and try and achieve. And right. And so it's like this beautiful kind of paradox about being present with what is, accepting, integrating, shifting your perspective rather than always just perpetuating the dominant pattern in our culture and in ourselves as humans.
I think, like the last thing you want to beat yourself up against is your own yoga practice. I mean, like this practice can kind of like, it can really wake you up or it can really pull you down. It's your choice about what you want to do with it. And the Ashtanga practice is built in this way because like if you can't do something or if you can't do it, then you feel bad about it, or people can, there's that continued challenge, but it's the intention you bring to that challenge. It's the intention you bring. It's not even about the one pose, like the idea of a struggle pose.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a misnomer. I think how can you bring the quality of attention so that the pose is just a part of the whole experience?
Mm-hmm.
If we're struggling in one thing, we have to look back at every previous thing and change that. Definitely. The practice is so beautifully choreographed, it's just that's why I've never felt I needed to go anywhere else or teach, and this is why we do the same thing every day, because the thing doesn't change, but we do. Mm-hmm. And we're honoring that, and we learn how to change with the thing. So it's like that one thing is like, oh, that pose, I can't do it yet. Why don't you look at everything else you're doing as well? And it's never just the one thing. It's all about the everything. How does the whole thing blossom? And I think for me, that's like the power of it. The whole thing blossoms the more we bring the awareness to and openness to everything that we do with it. And you're right, it's this massive metaphor around, then I can bring something like an openness to my life. The postures themselves are just positions we're placing in our body in, and hoping it means something. But what can I do if I can't do this pose? Well, what can I do? What attention am I bringing to myself as I do it? What stories am I telling myself? And it just comes back to the philosophy about the stories we tell. We learn how to, like I said, I think the way that talking to you and like thinking about it, I think what I've done over the years is get in touch with this ability to be comfortable with this sensitivity I have of myself and be more connected to that, and this is why I started writing and creating in certain ways that felt meaningful, because I feel touched by things, I've been moved by things, I feel like, and that's how my practice feels. I feel like my practice on any given day can be really moving, not emotional, but like I can let go into it. It's not this thing where I'm pushing through something. It's a real sense of openness that I can find. And, like no posture, no practice ever feels the same. With that as well. Because we think we're trying to just kind of like do it like this and this and this, when actually what happens is every day you're fresh, every day you're new, every day there's something more to notice. And like when I raise my arms up in Ekam, like what does it feel like to raise my arms today in a way that's light, that's open, that feels like it's got an attentiveness to it? I don't know. It's just kind of like it just kind of became much more. I don't know, meaningful,
compassionate,
like became moving, compassionate, more like I placed myself at the heart of it. Like the posture, the practice comes out of me. It's not like this is a thing. It's like, when we look at yoga teachers, it's like quite often you have the practice, you have a yoga teacher, the practice, and a student, and the practice sits between the teacher and the student. The student and the teacher says, "You've got to do it like that." Right, that's how you've got to do it. It has to be like that. Whereas there's other teachers like what I try and see is, here's the practice between us. Here's the practice that we know. And how does that come out alive in this moment in a way that makes sense and honors where we are right now? Yeah. Like it's drawn out of the person. It's not a practice that's there and you put it, and this is Ashtanga yoga and this is me, and that Ashtanga yoga, this sequence goes in like that. It's this blossoming of something that evolves out of your awareness of it. And and you start to see it's like, it's not just movement. It's not just me going, move my hands up and move my hands forward. It's this whole sensitivity of understanding the nature of what it means to be human, to move in relationship to my breath, to feel and to sense. And so this is the thing, like, this is how I teach now, because it's like, in most workshops I go to, I teach this way, and a predominant amount of people change the way they move. And it's just all I'm doing is going, listen more. That beautiful quote, my favorite line that starts any book is the mirror of yoga. Like Freeman writes, yoga begins with listening. He didn't need to write anything else. And everything, true. But yoga, and he's true, because it's not about listening. It's this deep listening. And we all have to check in with how we're listening, because we're listening through different lenses. And all I'm doing is going, here's a lens of awareness. Here's looking at it like this. And like all my workshops and things like that, it's just training people or just encouraging people to look in a slightly new way at what they're doing already, just to see if it makes a difference. And for some, it does. For others, they're like, yeah, that's nice, and go back to the old way, but it doesn't matter. It's just about offering a perspective that hopefully is helpful.
Yeah.
Well, I want to thank you for offering a helpful perspective to us and to our listeners, and sharing. And it's there's always an element of people are consuming media as entertainment, but this has been quite a kind of an amazing journey to be a part of and to listen, and I just want to thank you for sharing that.
It's a true Dharma talk.
It's a true Dharma talk. And so I just thank you for that.
People the thing is, people are getting told there's so much information, right? And there's so many, I've got podcasts, you've got a podcast, Adam's got a podcast. We've all got these things of way we're trying to connect to people, right? But it just comes back to, what are you noticing? What are you holding on to that's true? What are you holding on to that's helpful, that's not helpful? What are people telling you? What do you trust in yourself? We're all like adults. We can all explore. It comes back to this idea where we write back at the beginning, Russell, this idea of the guru. You've had Swenson on, I've had Swenson on, and he'll be like, the guru is you, is in you. The guru is in you, that kind of thing. But he's right, but we all have to work out where and how.
Yeah.
Because we're for doing this, and I don't know how you feel about you guys, but for doing this for quite a long time, I do feel different than when I started. I'm not, I've still got crazy personal shit, I'm having to deal with. But in my essence, in relationship to who I feel I am because of doing yoga, I do feel like, I don't know, there's an openness, there's a sensitivity that's come from engaging, from exploring, and I think that's what I want for everyone. I want us to I want people to not just go through the motions, but I would invite people to just really explore what movement and what they feel at any given time.
Yeah, I think that attention, to the present, to presence, to what's unfolding in the presence is so powerful.
And what I've learned is that like that presence is more a sense of who you feel you are in the world. If that's what samadhi is, then that ongoing, not this kind of these kind of either like sushumna and stuff like that, which is not it's all there. But I think for most of us, we're just trying to feel more what it means to feel connected in a world like this one, to feel like who we are, to feel what it means to have a voice and have us, and being able to connect and feel like we can create in a way that is meaningful. And so for me, I think it's the end goal. The end goal for me isn't the asana, isn't trying to get to some pose. It's nice. This morning, a beautiful student friend of mine did Karandavasana for the first time in 6 years. And we got up and she was like, ah! Just because she's been coming. And all I said to her is, try these kind of little movements here. And she was stuck over about 3 weeks. She's got it. And she got them. And you have this kind of like thing. But now that's done. You carry on.
Next.
You know what I mean? And so, but the point is about it's
now
the
you take it away
moving
from
moments. Yeah, exactly. Now you have to come up. You can't go. You got to come up. Then we move on. But the point is, it's the moments. It's the feeling that I don't know. I just think it's the things that bring us joy.
Yeah,
I think joy is like the things that bring us joy. I think this should not be this practice can bring us joy and bring us compassion, and can be a beautiful way of us exploring ourselves in every moment. We don't have to think that the end pose or a pose we're trying to get to or that eludes us and we're never going to do it is a thing, because it's not about that. It's just it's an element of taking back this practice and going, just explore it for the love of doing it. Just for the love of doing it, even if so I don't know, it's taking the weight out of what people think they're supposed to be doing, and just saying love it for the sake of loving it.
And if there are students out there who want to do yoga for the love of doing it, where can they find you next?
Well, I am in. You'll find me. Well, I've been doing a lot of traveling this year, like so much. And also I run a shala, and I'm online, and I'm doing all those things that you do. You have done. Still Point is the heart of the work. The ongoing Mysore program. But I'm traveling more in Europe. I've got a lovely retreat that I do annually in Salento in Italy in October, which is a beautiful 2 weeks. And then I think me and you again are back to back in Tenerife.
Yeah, we are in Tenerife in March.
And then
you and Greg are doing a teacher training, right?
Me and Greg are trying to bring these ideas and to a teacher training at Purple Valley in April, to begin to see how we can explore and encourage people who want to, become skilled, in certain ways, teachers of Ashtanga yoga, and compassionate in a compassionate and open way, in Goa next year in April. So yeah, there's that.
Nice.
So yeah, I mean, it's just continuing to share in a way, in as many ways as I can. You know, I feel like I'm doing a lot at the moment, but you know, again, it's just I've got such a passion for it.
They can contact you at scott@stillpoint.yoga. That's the way. Is there, and you have an IG, Scott Johnson Life?
Scott Johnson
That's
Life.
The best way.
It's me sharing poems and doing funny things.
Yeah.
Good.
Your beautiful poetry. And also the portraits.
And the portraits.
On your YouTube channel. Those are beautiful too.
Yeah, I'm doing a new thing. I mean, I've got like I've got some conversations on the podcast to come out, but I'm doing these new things called portraits on my YouTube channel, which are 15-minute conversations, video conversations. You're one of them, which is lovely, Harmony, with people just about
I'm going to link it in the show notes.
What practice means, what's meaningful. I've had some just like, and what it does is it means I feel like I love the long form, but I feel with the short form, and it's when you can see people and you can look at them.
Yeah.
I can talk to more people, which means I can talk to students. I can talk to people I meet who have got amazing stories. There's two amazing stories. There's one up already, one coming up soon from Alexander Meaden's place in Nursen. Two of his people, his practitioners and teachers who came out of Nursen, who back in the ring. Those ones are gold. Where I can talk to people about what's meaningful to them in a short space of time. So it's kind of a more visceral, I don't know, it feels like a lovely thing to do. So yeah, that's the portraits on YouTube. They're lovely.
Yeah, beautiful. So, and we'll put all your links in our show notes.
Thank you.
Thanks for spending time with us today. It was just so beautiful.
It's an absolute pleasure. Of course. Let's do it again.
Yeah.
Thank you both. Yeah.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Finding Harmony with me, your host, Harmony Slater. You can find out more information on my website, harmonyslater.com, and I look forward to connecting with you again soon.
Standing in eternity's shadow, watching the breaking waves, there's a heart